She stood before him with trembling hands, her scarred face illuminated by the coffee shop's soft glow, asking a question that could shatter what little courage she had left. His daughter watched from behind the counter, and in that moment, 3 lives hung suspended between cruelty and grace. Sarah Chen had stopped asking that question years ago. After the accident that melted half her face and took her fiancé's life, she'd learned that mirrors were enemies and strangers' eyes were minefields. She wore her long black hair like a curtain, letting it fall across the right side of her face, and she'd perfected the art of looking down, always down, at sidewalks and coffee cups and her own restless fingers. But today was different. Today, desperation had dragged her out of her carefully constructed shell. The job interview had gone exactly as she'd expected. The hiring manager's smile had frozen when Sarah pushed her hair back to shake hands. The woman had tried to hide it, but Sarah had seen it 1,000 times. That microsecond of shock, the involuntary recoil, the sudden overcompensation of forced cheerfulness. "We'll be in touch," the woman had said, her eyes skating away. They wouldn't be in touch. Sarah found herself in Miller's coffee house, a place she'd never been before, somewhere she could disappear into a corner, booth, and pretend the world didn't exist for an hour. She ordered a latte from a teenage girl with kind eyes and purple streaks in her hair, then retreated to the darkest corner she could find. "Dad, table 6 needs a refill," the girl called out. That's when Sarah first saw him. Marcus Miller emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron, flour dusting his dark forearms. He was perhaps 40, with graying temples, and the sort of weathered face that suggested he'd lived through some storms, but hadn't let them break him. He grabbed the coffee pot and made his rounds, moving with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own space. Sarah watched him interact with customers. He knew most by name. He teased an elderly man about his crossword puzzle. He remembered that the woman in the business suit took cream, no sugar. There was something magnetic about his presence, not his looks, though he was handsome enough, but the way he moved through the world without apology, without fear. "You okay over here?" Marcus appeared at her table, coffee pot in hand. "You've been staring at that latte for 20 minutes like it insulted your mother." Sarah's hand flew to her face, making sure her hair was in place. "I'm fine." That's what people say when they're not fine. He pulled out the chair across from her without asking. "Marcus Miller, I own this place. And before you tell me it's none of my business, you're right. But my daughter over there." He nodded toward the counter where the purple-haired girl was watching them. "She thinks I have a gift for knowing when people need to talk. I think she's confusing nosiness with intuition. But who am I to argue with a 16-year-old? Despite herself, Sarah almost smiled. "Sarah, and it's been a rough day. Rough day at Miller's Coffee requires at least a muffin. House rules." He stood and returned moments, later with a blueberry muffin the size of her fist. "On the house. Jenna made them this morning. She's convinced she's going to culinary school next year, so we're all guinea pigs for her experiments." Over the next hour, something unexpected happened. Marcus didn't leave. He sat there, drinking his own coffee, and somehow pulled Sarah into conversation without making it feel forced. He told her about taking over the coffee shop after his wife died 5 years ago, about raising Jenna alone, about burning everything for the first 6 months until Jenna finally took over the baking. He talked about the regulars, the rhythm of the business, the way he'd learned that coffee was never really about coffee, it was about connection. Sarah found herself talking too, carefully at first, then more freely. She told him about her master's degree in library science, about how she'd been searching for a job for 18 months. She didn't mention the accident. She never mentioned the accident. "So you're smart, qualified, and persistent," Marcus said, studying her. "And yet nobody's hiring you. That's not adding up." Sarah's hand went to her face again. The gesture had become automatic, protective. Marcus noticed. He noticed everything, she realized. "I should go," Sarah said, gathering her things. "Hey, Sarah!" Marcus leaned forward. "I don't know what you're hiding behind that hair, and you don't have to tell me. But whatever it is, it doesn't define what you know or what you can do. Anyone who can't see past the surface isn't worth working for anyway." The words, meant to comfort, landed like a punch. Sarah stood abruptly. "You don't understand, so help me understand." And that's when it happened. Later, Sarah wouldn't be able to explain what possessed her. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the cumulative weight of 18 months of rejection. Maybe it was something in Marcus's eyes that made her want to test him, to prove that he was like everyone else, that his kindness had limits. She swept her hair back from her face, fully revealing the thick, ropey scars that consumed the right side, pulling her eye down slightly, distorting her mouth. The surgical reconstruction had done what it could, but nothing could erase what fire had written on her skin. "Am I beautiful?" The words came out as a challenge, bitter and raw. It was the cruelest question she could ask, the one that would force him to either lie or wound her. The coffee shop seemed to hold its breath. Jenna froze at the counter. A customer's fork clinked against a plate. Marcus sat back in his chair, and Sarah watched his face, waiting for the flinch, the pity, the awkward scramble for politically correct words. He looked at her scarred face for a long moment. Really looked, studying her as if she were a painting in a museum, something that deserved attention and thought. "You want the truth?" he finally said. Sarah's throat tightened. "That's why I asked." Marcus stood and moved to the chair beside her, close enough that she couldn't hide. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. "No, you're not beautiful. You're so much more than that." He held up a hand as she started to turn away. "Listen, beautiful is easy. Beautiful is symmetry and skin-deep genetics and luck. Beautiful is what you're born with. But you survived something that would have destroyed most people. You got a master's degree while your world was falling apart. You keep showing up to interviews even though you know what's coming. You sit here with your pain and still manage to almost smile when a stranger tells bad jokes. That's not beautiful. That's magnificent. That's courage walking around in human skin." Tears spilled down Sarah's face, tracking paths across both the scarred and unscarred sides. "My wife," Marcus continued, his voice rough with memory, "she died of cancer. Toward the end, she'd lost her hair, lost 50 pounds, barely looked like herself. One night she asked me if I still thought she was beautiful, and I told her the truth. I told her she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen, because after everything, she still sang to Jenna at bedtime. She still laughed at my terrible jokes. She still fought for every single day. Beauty fades. Character is forever." He pulled a napkin from the dispenser and handed it to Sarah. "So no, I don't think you're beautiful. I think you're better. I think you're real. And anyone who can't see the person behind those scars is missing out on knowing someone extraordinary." Sarah couldn't speak. She'd expected platitudes or pity. She'd never expected truth. "I'm looking for someone to manage the coffee shop part-time," Marcus said, as if they'd just been discussing the weather. "Ordering, scheduling, some customer service. Jenna and I handle the food, but the business side is drowning me. You interested?" Sarah stared at him. "You don't even know me." "I know enough. You need a job. I need help. And I have a feeling you're exactly the kind of person who won't let me get away with my disorganized filing system." He smiled. "Besides, Jenna already likes you. She's been eavesdropping this whole time." From the counter, Jenna called out, "I'm not eavesdropping. I'm just auditorially observant." Despite everything, Sarah laughed. Actually laughed. The sound felt foreign, like a language she'd forgotten she spoke. "Why?" she asked Marcus. "Why would you do this?" He stood, picking up their empty cups. "Because 5 years ago, I was a wreck. Couldn't function. Couldn't see past my own pain. And people showed up. They brought casseroles and patience and job opportunities I didn't deserve. They saw past my grief to who I could become." He met her eyes. "We're not meant to walk through fire alone. Sarah, sometimes we just need someone to remind us we're still worth knowing on the other side." 3 months later, Sarah stood behind the counter at Miller's Coffee House, coordinating a catering order while Jenna perfected her croissant recipe in the kitchen. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. The scars were visible, undeniable, but she'd stopped hiding them. A customer came in, a young woman who stared a moment too long at Sarah's face. Sarah met her eyes steadily, smiled, and asked, "What can I get for you today?" The woman ordered. They exchanged pleasantries. The world continued turning. That evening, as Sarah was closing up, Marcus emerged from his office with a stack of papers. The catering numbers look good. You've got a real head for this. Thank you, Sarah said. For everything. For this job, for telling the truth, Marcus interrupted gently. For seeing me, Sarah finished. Marcus nodded, understanding the distinction. That's the thing about truth, Sarah. Real truth isn't about being pretty or ugly, beautiful or scarred. It's about being seen for who you actually are. And who you are is someone worth knowing. Outside, the sun was setting over the small town, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Sarah locked the door and walked to her car without her hair hiding her face, without her eyes on the ground. She walked like someone who had finally learned that she was more than what fire had taken, more than what mirrors reflected. She walked like someone who knew the truth, that the most beautiful thing about any of us isn't what we look like, but who we choose to be when everything else is stripped away. And in a world that often confuses the two, that truth was everything.